The crystal chandelier cast shadows across the mahogany table as I sat perfectly still, watching my family perform their usual symphony of success. Camden, golden boy extraordinaire, was regaling the table with tales from his latest neurosurgery rotation. My parents hung on every word like he was delivering the cure for mortality itself. And then, Camden continued, his voice animated with the kind of passion I'd never been allowed to express. We managed to remove the entire tumor without damaging the surrounding tissue. The patient made a full recovery. Applause. Always applause for Camden. I took a sip of wine, the expensive kind my parents only brought out when they wanted to impress someone. Tonight, that someone was Harper Carlyle, my brother's fiancé and apparently the newest member of our family's achievement parade. That's incredible, Harper said, her voice warm with genuine admiration. You must feel so fulfilled knowing you're saving lives. Saving lives. The phrase echoed in my mind as I thought about the 47 medication errors our platform had prevented just last week, the 23 misdiagnoses caught by our communication protocols, the countless patients whose lives had been quietly, invisibly improved by the system I'd built from nothing. But they didn't know about any of that. And Sierra, my mother's voice cut through my thoughts like a blade wrapped in silk. How are things going with your computer work? Computer work, as if I were fixing printers in some basement IT department. It's going well, I replied, my standard response to their standard question. 6 years of building MetConnect from a garage startup to a $200 million valuation, and this was still the depth of their curiosity. Still at that little startup? My father asked, not looking up from his steak. You know, it's never too late to consider law school. I have connections at Northwestern. I smiled politely. I'm happy where I am, Dad. Harper's eyes flickered toward me with what might have been interest, but the moment passed as Camden launched into another story, this one about a particularly challenging brain surgery. The table's attention shifted back to him like iron filings to a magnet. This was my role in the Langford family drama, the supporting character who existed to make the leads look better by comparison, the cautionary tale about what happens when you don't follow the prescribed path to success. What they didn't know was that I'd stopped caring about their approval 3 years ago, right around the time we hit our first $50 million in revenue. Growing up Langford meant living in a house where achievement was currency and anything less than perfection was bankruptcy. My father, Dr. Graham Langford, was the kind of cardiothoracic surgeon who had wings of hospitals named after him. My mother, Eleanor, was the attorney who made opposing counsel reconsider their career choices. Then there was Camden, who'd been destined for greatness since he performed his first successful surgery on his teddy bear at age 5, with Mom's sewing kit. And me? I was the glitch in their perfect system. I still remember the day I showed my dad my first real program, a scheduling system I'd built for our high school's student clinic. I was 17, buzzing with pride and possibility. I'd spent weeks perfecting it, dreaming about the moment he'd finally see what I could do. He glanced at it for maybe 10 seconds before handing it back. That's nice, sweetheart, but you should really focus on your SAT prep. You'll need every advantage to get into a good pre-law program. That night, I deleted the program, not because I didn't believe in it, but because I was tired of building things that no one would ever see as valuable. But some flames refused to be extinguished. College was my escape pod. I chose a small tech school in Colorado, far enough from Boston that the Langford name carried no weight. There, I wasn't the disappointment, I was just Maya, the girl who saw patterns in chaos and possibilities in problems. That's where I met Alex Rivera, my co-founder and the only person who understood my vision from day one. Alex had lost his sister to a medical error, a miscommunication between her primary care doctor and a specialist that resulted in a fatal drug interaction. I'd watched my grandmother suffer through 3 misdiagnoses because her medical team couldn't effectively share information. We both knew the healthcare system was broken. We both believed we could fix it. MetConnect started as a late-night conversation in a coffee shop, evolved into a prototype built in Alex's garage, and somehow transformed into the most comprehensive healthcare communication platform on the market. We'd created something that seamlessly integrated patient data, provider schedules, and emergency protocols into one intuitive system. While my classmates were fighting over internships at Goldman Sachs, Alex and I were pitching to hospital administrators and living on ramen noodles, while Camden was getting another academic award. I was closing our first $1 million contract. The difference was that no one in my family knew any of this was happening. I made the decision to keep my success secret not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Every time I'd tried to share something I was passionate about, it had been diminished, dismissed, or redirected. I couldn't bear the thought of them doing that to MetConnect. So I let them believe I was still figuring things out while we quietly revolutionized healthcare communication. I let them think I was struggling while we raised $50 million in Series B funding. I let them worry about my future while Fortune magazine called me one of the 30 under 30 healthcare innovators to watch. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built something that saved lives, literally, provably saved lives. And my family thought I was a failure because I wasn't wearing a white coat or a lawyer suit while doing it. But success, even silent success, has a way of creating ripples. Harper Carlyle's name first appeared in my inbox 3 months before the engagement dinner. She was the director of strategic partnerships at Horizon Health Systems, one of the largest healthcare conglomerates in the country. Her initial email was professional but warm, expressing interest in a potential acquisition. I almost deleted it. We'd turned down 4 acquisition offers in the past year, each one larger than the last. Alex and I weren't ready to give up control of our baby. Then I googled her name and nearly choked on my coffee. Harper Carlyle was dating my brother. The woman who wanted to buy my company for $200 million was the same woman who would soon be sitting across from me at family dinners, listening to my parents explain why I was the underachieving sibling. I spent 2 weeks debating whether to tell anyone. In the end, I decided to let the universe play its hand. If Harper connected the dots, so be it. If not, I'd continue being the family disappointment while secretly running one of the most successful healthcare startups in the country. The cosmic joke was almost too perfect to interrupt. The engagement dinner was held at Alinea, the kind of restaurant where the waitstaff knew your net worth before they knew your name. My mother had called 3 times to remind me to dress appropriately and make a good impression on Harper's family. I chose a simple black dress and pearl earrings, professional but not flashy. I'd learned long ago that the most powerful people rarely needed to advertise their success. Harper was everything I'd expected: polished, intelligent, and genuinely kind. She asked thoughtful questions about my work, though I kept my answers deliberately vague. I'm in healthcare technology, I said when she inquired about my career. Oh, like app development? She asked, her interest clearly genuine. Something like that. The conversation flowed easily from there, too easily. I found myself liking my brother's fiancée, which complicated the secret I was keeping. Harper wasn't just successful, she was substantive. She cared about the work, not just the wealth. Under different circumstances, we might have been friends. Then Camden stood to make his toast, and the familiar choreography began. He thanked our parents for their support, acknowledged his mentors, and painted a picture of his future with Harper that gleamed with promise and prestige. To family, he concluded, raising his glass, and to the foundations that make all success possible. I drank to that, though I suspected we had very different definitions of what those foundations looked like. The shift happened during the 3rd course. Somewhere between the molecular gastronomy and the wine that cost more than most people's rent. Harper had been asking me about my work, not dismissively, but with the kind of focused attention that suggested she was actually listening. Healthcare technology is such a fascinating field, she said, cutting into what the menu called deconstructed beet salad. There's so much innovation happening right now. Have you heard of a company called MetConnect? The table didn't go silent. It exploded into silence. The kind that happens when the air gets sucked out of a room. They're revolutionizing healthcare communication, Harper continued, apparently oblivious to the sudden tension. Their platform has reduced medication errors by 40% in every hospital that's implemented it. The founder is this mysterious figure, Sierra Langford. No one knows much about her, but she's brilliant. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father's wine glass froze halfway to his lips. Camden looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Sierra Langford, Harper repeated, her voice taking on a strange quality as she turned to look at me. Sierra Langford. I watched the realization dawn on her face like sunrise over a battlefield. Her eyes widened, her lips parted, and for the first time all evening, Harper Carlyle looked genuinely shocked. You're Sierra Langford, she whispered. You're the founder of MetConnect. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the kitchen staff preparing the next course in the distance. My mother looked like she'd seen a ghost. My father appeared to be having an existential crisis. Camden just stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between awe and betrayal. Yes, I said simply, I am. What followed was the most surreal dinner of my life. Harper, to her credit, recovered quickly and began asking the kinds of questions that proved she'd done her homework. She knew our revenue numbers, our client retention rates, and our expansion plans better than some of our own board members. We've been tracking MetConnect for 2 years. she said, her voice filled with professional admiration. Your platform isn't just innovative, it's transformative. You've solved problems that entire teams at established companies couldn't crack. My parents sat in stunned silence, occasionally exchanging glances that suggested they were questioning everything they thought they knew about their daughter. My father, who'd spent years suggesting I apply for entry-level positions at established companies, was learning that I'd built a company that those established companies wanted to acquire. The valuation we discussed, Harper continued, it's not just about the technology, it's about the vision. You've created something that's genuinely improving patient outcomes. Camden finally found his voice. Sierra, why didn't you tell us? I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and saw confusion, hurt, and something that might have been respect. Because I needed to build it without worrying about whether you'd approve, I said quietly, and because I wasn't sure you'd understand. But we're family, my mother interjected, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. We should have known. Should you? I asked, not unkindly. When was the last time any of you asked me about my work? Not to redirect me towards something more practical, but because you were actually curious about what I was building? The question hung in the air like smoke. No one had an answer because we all knew the truth. They'd been so busy trying to fix me that they'd never bothered to see what I was becoming. The conversation that followed was the most honest one our family had ever had. My parents, to their credit, didn't try to take credit for my success or pretend they'd been supportive all along. They acknowledged their mistakes, admitted their biases, and asked questions that showed they were finally, genuinely interested in understanding my work. We were wrong, my mother said simply. We thought we were protecting you from failure, but we were actually protecting you from success. My father nodded slowly. We saw deviation from our path as disaster. We didn't consider that you might be building a better path. Camden was quiet for most of the conversation, but as we prepared to leave, he pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, he said, and I could hear the sincerity in his voice. But I'm also sorry. You accomplished something incredible, and you did it without any support from the people who should have been cheering you on from the beginning. I smiled at my brother, feeling a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying begin to lift. I didn't need your cheering, I said, but I'm glad to have it now. 6 months later, the Horizon acquisition closed for $200 million. Alex and I retained significant equity and operational control, while gaining access to resources that would allow us to scale globally. I kept my title as founder and CEO, but now I had a team of 200 people and a platform that served over 500 hospitals across North America. The real transformation, though, was quieter and more personal. It was my mother texting me articles about women in tech with messages like "Thought you'd find this interesting." It was my father actually reading our white papers and asking thoughtful questions about our research. It was Camden mentioning MetConnect in his medical journals and introducing me to colleagues as my sister, the healthcare innovator. But most importantly, it was me finally understanding that their approval had never been the prize I thought it was. The real victory was building something meaningful, something that mattered, something that made the world a little bit better. I still think about that dinner sometimes, about the moment when my secret success became public knowledge, but I don't think about it as the moment my family finally saw me. I think about it as the moment I realized I'd been visible all along, to the patients whose lives our platform improved, to the healthcare workers who used our tools, to the investors who believed in our vision. Their recognition was nice, but it was never necessary. Real success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right and having the courage to build something that matters, even when no one else believes it's possible. Especially when no one else believes it's possible. The empire I built in silence speaks louder than any applause ever could. Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you in next video.